All right, doctors, so let's be real. How many of you have launched something in your practices and started off really strong? The team is excited, everyone is doing everything, and then 6 weeks later, quietly faded back into the background and going back to your old ways. Maybe it was like a new scheduling protocol, maybe it was patient communication, maybe it was the earlier version of Morning Huddle where you really got intentional about it for a month, and then life happened and it just dissolved. Nobody made a big announcement that it was over, it just kind of stopped happening. If that sounds familiar, I want you to know that your team is not the problem, and it's definitely not a motivation problem. That is a sustainment problem, and that's exactly what we're going to fix today. Welcome to episode 5, and this is the final episode of our Morning Huddle series. I'm Dr. Simone Ellis, and if you've been with me since episode 1, first of all, thank you, because we are building something real together across these 5 episodes. And now I'm hoping that you've had purpose, you found value in the prep system and the roles and the number framework and the complete Morning Huddle operating system. And I'm genuinely proud of you if you did all the work for this series. But here's the truth I want to be upfront with you about, because in today's content, I know that you worked hard from like episode 1 through 4, but sometimes we can feel things fall apart within 60 days if the culture in the huddle room is not intentionally built or it's not consistently protected. And I don't want you to think it's because the system is fragile. It's probably because the systems without culture are just like checklists. And then checklists do not inspire people to show up every single morning ready to win. So today we're going to cover 3 things: how to build the energy that makes people want to be in that room, how to hold people accountable that keeps that standard from quietly sliding, and how to create traditions in your morning huddle when your team would actually feel kind of bad if they miss something. The last one is the standard I really want you to aim for. So let's build it. A system without culture is just a checklist, and a checklist does not inspire people to show up every morning with a ready to win. So let me hit you guys with some research, but the Gallup research on employment engagement has documented this consistently. Team members who feel like their daily work is connected to more of a meaningful goal are significantly more productive and significantly less likely to leave the team. So in dental practices, especially when we look at the ADA, they estimate that over $5,000 to $10,000 per team member is a factor in recruiting, training, and lost productivity, and that the morning huddle builds genuine connection and shared purpose and not creating like this soft culture environment. It's a retention strategy with real return on investments. So we got to think about this, because the morning huddle is a daily movement where your team feels either connected to something bigger than their individual task list or they don't. And whether or not that connection happens is almost entirely by the energy in that room. Now, I want to visit something I said in episode 1 about the doctor's role, because it belongs here in the culture conversation. The doctor, guys, sets the ceiling, not the floor, the ceiling. So whatever energy that you are bringing into the room, that is the maximum that that energy can reach. So if you walk in depleted or checked out or definitely disengaged by your team feels that. But when you walk in and you're genuinely present and you're excited, well, your team is prepared to give you everything in that room, and they match that level. I've been in offices where doctors walk into the morning huddle and you could feel that energy shift where it's like, ugh, what's going on here? And then I've been in doctors' offices where the office manager and the team are so excited and they're hitting their production goals, and it definitely is a different vibe. So what you have to decide on is what type of energy do you want to have? Now, beyond the doctor's energy, here's how you build energy into a structure of a huddle for itself, so it's not entirely dependent on how well the doctor slept the night before. First tool I call is like the win for the day. Before the office manager launches the financial report, you take 60 seconds to share a win from one of those things from the previous day. A patient who left in tears because they were so happy, or a team member who went above and beyond. That same day treatment came together perfectly with the team communicating so well. So I want you to talk about one win, 60 seconds, and just remind your team before the business conversation actually start what they do every day really matters. The second tool of what I call is the Motivation Monday, and you can name it whatever you want to in your office's culture, but you want to do this once a week. And typically I like it on Monday so you can pump up your team and you can add 3 to 5 minutes of like a cultural moment for your huddle. This could be like reading a Goop or Yelp review, or it can be the whole team sharing something positive about one of their teammates. It could be the doctor actually writing a personal note to each team member and reading them out out loud. It could be a quick team challenge or a celebration of the goal that you guys hit last week. The point is not the specific activity, but it's the point that the morning huddle has a regular moment and not a production number. And that's why we choose to do this work, because it does have a lot of meaning. That moment is where people remember if having a hard Tuesday is gonna happen, they got a reason to bring their best self to the office for the rest of the day. So docs, here's your first takeaway. Add one cultural moment for the morning huddle this week. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It could be a win from yesterday. It could be a review read out loud. It could be 30 seconds of appreciation from a team member who showed up in a big way. So just start there, and once you see that room respond, you're never gonna wanna skip that. Now here's the part of cultural conversations that people avoid because it feels really uncomfortable. I'm gonna ask you to stay with me because this piece determines whether your systems you build are actually gonna hold. Doctors, the word accountability is so serious, and I hear doctors all the time say they don't want their morning huddles to feel punitive and they don't want people to feel called out or judged. And I completely agree with that, because the morning huddle is not supposed to be a shaming or a pressure session, but a broken huddle is going to kill your team culture faster than anything else. But here's what I also know. The morning huddle with no accountability is a morning huddle that's going to drift. And it's gonna start over time, like you'll see 2 weeks something happening, then the prep stops happening for a month, then it gets skipped every day, and then we get so busy. The roles will be tight for a while, and then it'll slowly collapse back to two people taking their time when everyone waits to be dismissed. So this is not because your team is bad. It's because without accountability, every system drifts towards the path of least resistance. So like that pimple that we have, or like that abscess in the mouth, you know how the pus goes towards like the end? Like that's the path of least resistance. The infection has to get out somewhere. That's human nature. But their job as a leader is to design against it. So let me walk you through what a healthy accountability looks like in a morning huddle, because it's very different from what most people imagine when they hear the word. So healthy accountability starts with clear standards and everyone knowing before the huddle even starts. Not implied, it has to be written down. If huddle starts at 8 a.m., everybody is in that room at 8 a.m. The prep is done the night before. Each person knows their role. That's not a suggestion. That is how the office operates. When you establish that standard that clearly is consistent, most of the accountability conversations never have to happen out loud, because people know exactly what is expected. And most people, when their expectations are clear, they're gonna rise to meet that. Most people accountability conversations stop at, what do I do when someone does not meet that standard? What they don't ask is, why is that standard not being met the first place? And the second question is all about leverage. So in my experience with my team members that were not consistent at the morning huddle, one or three things happen. Either A, the standard was never made clear enough to be taken seriously, or this is going to be something that's going to make you very uncomfortable. But if my standard has been clear and my team members didn't follow my standard, a private conversation, not public, had to be had. Or the huddle itself is not delivering enough value for that person to feel like showing up and making that preparation worth it. The third one, like I said, might sting a little, but I want you to sit with that because it's real. If your team is not engaged in the morning huddle, part of the diagnosis is that it has to have an honest look at the huddle itself and see if it's worth something that people are engaging in. So when the huddle is valuable, people show up prepared. Not always perfectly, not without reminders sometimes, but they do show up consistently because they know that what happens in the room affects how their day is going to go, and they care about how their day goes. So here's how accountability works in a well-run huddle. Tardiness is addressed privately and directly, not in front of the team. So if someone is consistently arriving late or unprepared, that is a one-on-one conversation that happens separately outside of the huddle. In the huddle itself, you want to start on time, regardless of if everyone is there yet. Every single time. That standard is protected by your behavior and not the announcement about it. If your teammates are coming incomplete with not incomplete preps or having drama in the practice, a scheduler is coming without their numbers, the team is frustrated, the commentary is going on and it's real negative, it's like, what do I have to do to make this huddle better? You need to have a real honest conversation on, is your team accountable? The goal of accountability in the morning huddle is never to make anyone feel bad, but it's definitely to protect the standard that everyone has agreed to and everyone definitely benefits from. When you frame it that way, the team usually is going to hold everybody accountable because even when you have to step in, they understand the standard and they know who's dropped the ball. So takeaway number 2 is this: write down 3 non-negotiables for your morning huddle, whether it's the start time, prep expectation, role responsibilities. And what I want you to do is share them with your team this week, not as a warning, but as a commitment. This is what we're building, guys, and this is what it looks like. And this is what consistency is going to hold for the first 30 days. That first 30 days is where the culture gets established and everything else is maintenance. Docs, here's the question I get asked more than almost any other question about morning huddle. And I want to answer it directly because I think an honest answer is more useful than a motivational one. How do I keep it going when the novelty wears off? Because let's keep it real, it's gonna wear off. The first week of the properly structured morning huddle feels like a revelation. Week 3 still feels good, but then week 6 is where the real test starts, because by week 6, you're no longer new, right? It's a part of how the office operates, and that transition from exiting the initiative and normal daily standards where most people, the huddle system starts to kind of fall apart. Here's what I know about sustainment from the running of practice and coaching clients and practice owners. The first thing is this: you have to measure it. Not like being obsessed about it, but in a way that shows that every morning huddle into a performance review. You have to show it consistently. Once a month, ideally, you want to take a team meeting or a brief leadership check-in, and you want to look at whether the huddle is doing its job. Are we starting on time? Is the prep being done? Is each member in the role reporting cleanly and clearly? Are the numbers in the conversation even landing? Why you measure this is because you want to see when something is starting to drift before the drift actually collapses. I mean, it's kind of like checking in with your partner, right? If you have a boyfriend or a husband or a wife, you want to check in kind of routinely to make sure, hey, are we on the same page or are we drifting? And that conversation about a small drift is significantly easier than a conversation of a complete breakdown. The second thing that you want to see is that it's evolving. Is that morning huddle serving your team perfectly in month 1? And should it look different in month 6? Maybe we should add one more metrics to the team, or maybe we should add more things to the quarterly meeting. The office that makes their huddle like the last and thriving thing, these are things that I keep asking. What's working? What's gotten stale? What can we add to keep this feeling of the team growing than rather maintaining it? And the last thing that I look at is the one I want you to look at the closest, because I think that this one is the most important and probably the least talked about, is you have to celebrate wins. Docs, we work our butts off, and so do your teams. And it doesn't always have to be these huge wins to celebrate. The small ones are important too. So when your scheduler fills those 3 open slots and use the referral strategy from the morning huddle, call that out. When your treatment coordinator flags that same day opportunity, celebrate them. When your team has the best production month ever and you can trace that directly to that morning huddle, give them a reward for that. Because here's what I know about people. We repeat behavior that gets recognized, not because we're performing it for praise, but because recognition connects effort to outcome in a way that makes effort feel worth repeating. When your team knows what work that they are doing in the morning huddle and that it matters, they can see it, they'll appreciate it, and they do not need to be motivated to keep showing up and being prepared. They're already motivated, because when a huddle is giving the team something real in return, they're going to want to bring it. So my last takeaway, guys, is to schedule a 30-day morning huddle check-in and a calendar right now. Like, don't do a big review, just a 15-minute conversation with your office manager about what's working, what's drifted, and what's one thing that you can add or adjust to keep that energy moving forward. Do that every 30 days for the first 6 months. And by the 6 months, you guys are going to be so embedded in having your office morning huddle that the check-ins will feel like routine maintenance rather than course correction. I want to take a moment before we close out this series to zoom out, because I think that there's something bigger happening here in what we've built across these 5 episodes, and I want to name it. The morning huddle is 30 minutes out of a workday, and that's probably 8 to 10 hours long, right? So your work hour is 8 to 10 hours long. Your morning huddle's only 30 minutes. And yet those 30 minutes are running right when your team walks into that room prepared, knowing their role, owning their numbers, connected to each other and the goal of the day. And when that's happening consistently, it changes everything downstream. It changes how the patients are greeted from the front desk, not scrambling. It changes how treatment is being presented because treatment coordination already knows what opportunities exist before the patient sits down. It changes how the day ends because the team did not spend 8 hours reacting, they spent 8 hours executing. This is not about making a better morning huddle. It's just a different type of practice. And that's what the Freedom Framework has always been about. My goal is not to just have you guys running meetings, but to build a practice where your structure is so clear and consistent that freedom is actually enjoying your work and your life becomes possible. Because when the system is doing its job, you don't have to be the system. You get to be the doctor, the leader, the person who built something worth coming to every single day. That's the practice I want for you. Docs, that's my complete morning huddle operating system. And if you've implemented even one piece of this across the series, I want to hear about it. So drop it in the comments of what changed your practice. What did your team say? What it shifted? I want to read every single comment about the wins in the series because I genuinely want you guys to have that sense of freedom. Now, if you want to go deeper into the Freedom Framework Vault, this is where all the templates, the guides, the frameworks in the series live. So we have the 72-hour prep guide, the roles, that reporting template, that daily production target, that 30-day huddle implementation tracker. All of this is designed specifically so that you can just hand that over to your office manager. And that's how we run our morning huddle now. And the links are in the description. And for those who are at the point and they're ready for that one-on-one conversation about where your practice specifically needs, and not a course, not a membership, but a real strategic partner who is sat in the chair and has tried to build something amazing, my one-on-one coaching applications are also in the description. Thank you for being a part of all 5 episodes. This series was built for you. Now get up and run a successful morning huddle worth showing up for.